I was talking to you guys about the snow cap being 143% higher. This kind of gives you an idea of how much water we got coming off the mountain. There's still a whack load. That's supposed to be a river. And you can see it's right up to the bank here. Right out to the other side. It's crazy. But the good thing is when all this is gone, there'll be silt everywhere. So it should be pretty good for looking for tracks. Hey everybody, it's Leon with Bigfoot Okanagan, and I am at Maple Lake. The great thing about where I live is there's just, I wouldn't say hundreds. There probably is hundreds within the area, but within a very short distance from my acreage, there's probably a good 50 lakes anyways, for sure. And this is certainly a beautiful lake here, except the water levels have definitely come up. This is Squatch Ramble number 4 for 2018, and I want to talk to you guys a little bit about doing a few things in regards to self-education. But before I do that, I want to thank, I'm not sure how you guys are finding me on our Facebook page or my YouTube page, because I don't really care whether or not I have 1 million people. I'm not looking for 1 million people. I've said that numerous times on my Facebook, or that what I'm looking for is a core group of people that are honest and sincere about their process. And I want to put a bit of a high shout out to people in England. Hey everybody. I'm not sure how you guys are finding out about what I'm doing, but it's been kind of interesting to see how many from different parts of England are checking out what I'm doing and stuff. I do want to put a shout out to Bigfoot Tony. You're brilliant, Tony. You did some pretty good analysis on some of your videos, I'll tell you for sure, and you caught things that other people didn't, so that was really awesome, man. And as you can tell, Tony, I don't have to go and do the measurements out on that mission's YouTube, because you found out, I think before I even got back from mission, that that was more likely a hoax. And that's kind of one of the stuff I want to talk about. I actually went to the mission to the Hoover Lake incident. And you know, that island's like 167 feet across. They obviously filmed it from a cell phone, because there's a road that goes right around the lake. And the cell phone, if any of you use cell phones, you know it always pushes everything back when you're filming. So, and I guess that's part of the frustrating thing. Again, most people who watch me when are watching me are beginners, because that's kind of who my audience is. It's for people who are starting out, and the frustration that comes when you're starting out, because there's so much stuff online, and as Thomas Steenberg says, it's almost like the asylum, the inmates have taken over the asylum. And most of the stuff online, and I have to agree with them, it's like snake salesman, snake oil salesman, you know. It's just, how do you check these guys out? How do you know what's valid? How do you know what's real? You know, that's one reason why we don't post things that, I'm going to pause it here for a second, but we don't post things that aren't pretty solid, because it doesn't help out the issue at all. Anyways, I mean, I like solid information, and I also like facts. And the reason why I do what I do is, it's not because, you know, I've seen something online that made me prove that Sasquatches are real, because I don't know what a Sasquatch is, like I mentioned on the last Squatch Ramble, because I'm not a Sasquatch. But what I do know is academics, PhD level academics, say there's something out there, and that's kind of what I build on. And as mentioned, you know, like I have to tell you guys, because again, Okanagan Bigfoot people anyways, you know, I think 95% of what's online is not true. It's not factual. It's more of a perception on things, or a hypothesis that's been put onto things, but unless something is actually been shown, in other words, the Sasquatch has actually been shown to do it, it makes it a little hard. That was a quad. Makes it a little hard to know what we're actually looking at. The other thing I'm discovering too is the old guard who's been around for a long time. We're talking decades. One of the questions I always ask them, of course, is if you've seen a Sasquatch personally yourself. And I'm kind of getting surprised at how many people who've been doing research for decades have maybe had one, two, maybe 3 sightings in this course of, anywhere from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And that kind of is interesting. Even with Thomas Steenberg, when we talked about it, it wasn't until 8 years later when he found his first track that he was really sold in onto the whole idea. Up to that point, he was doing kind of what I'm doing right now, which is, the professionals, academics are saying there's something out there. And, I kind of buy the idea about tracks are facts. I get you can kind of what's the word I'm looking for, hoax them, but when you start understanding how tracks work, again from the academics describing how the mechanics are of it, it's pretty hard to fake them, unless, like Thomas had mentioned, you're carrying 16 different types of fake footprints you strap on and you keep changing them around and stuff. But with that mid-torsal break, that's, I'll just stop here for a second. Part of the thing at my job to do, because I deal with mostly people who are beginners, is to ask the stupid questions. Because they're probably not stupid to them. They're probably, you're probably watching, if you're an old school guy, you're probably going, geez, that's a stupid question. Well, it's not stupid to us, because a lot of the information that we already know, but when you're starting out, you don't know. Like, for instance, that mid-torsal break, when Thomas pointed that out and I asked the question, what's the difference between that mid-torsal break one from the Patty film and the one that looks like a normal footprint? And one's in motion, one's not in motion. Doesn't sound like a big deal to us, but it's kind of important information for those who are starting out. I had a great conversation with Jennifer. I'll post her video link down here this week, and we were discussing tracks and a few other ideas in that. And one of the things that I found that's been helpful for me is to do your own personal research, not regarding specifically Sasquatch stuff, but in regards to what you're looking for in the bush. So one of the things we were talking about was, if you have snow in your area, it's probably a little late for a lot of us because spring is coming around, but go outside and make a boot print in the snow. And especially if you have snow out by your house. The next thing you're going to do is take your boot off and your sock off and make a footprint with your bare foot in the snow. And then the third thing you can do is go get a snowshoe, if you want to. You don't have to do that, but if you've got a snowshoe, and they're about 2 feet long, make a snowshoe print in the snow. And then over a period of a few weeks, as spring starts coming around, take pictures, maybe once a week, so you can see how the shape and changes happen with footprints. This also applies to, listen, if you're finding prints out in water, take a step, especially if you have sandy beaches, take a step out into the sand and then walk into the sand that's under the water, and next time you're in the area, check out those prints, take pictures of them, so you really start to get the feel of what those things look like from the inside out, from your own perspective. It really helps give you wisdom. Knowledge is head stuff, wisdom is the application of understanding how it actually looks and why it looks that way. There's just so much I wanted to talk about today. I'm not sure I'll cover it all. I wanted to also talk a little bit about, I posted that challenge out about, if you guys have an area that's got a lot of vocals, you see footprints in there, there seems to be lots of activity, and they seem to be sticking around that area, is to tell me, what do you need to film them? And I'm not kidding you about that. I want you to contact me, let me know what what it would take to film them. I mentioned about military quality drones and all that kind of stuff, and probably some of you guys in your head went to the Falcon project, and what was the other one they did with the balloons, because the Falcon one went down. It wasn't ready for it, that's why it didn't happen. There's other ways of doing it. And when I mention about areas that have high activity, I'm not just talking about transient activity, so like Thomas and I were chatting about that a couple of weeks ago, was about all of a sudden in one particular area there seems to be lots of activity for a 7 to 8 day period, and then they kind of disappear. Now I know some of you out there have had activity where it's kind of similar to that, where you go into areas or they seem to come around and then they dissipate for a while. And then all of a sudden they show up again and they dissipate for a while. You have areas like that, you want to take note, mark it on a calendar, find out what the seasons, find out what the rhythm is if you can. When Jennifer was talking to me, she does what's doing controlled studies, and I think controlled studies are important. So there's an area that she gifts at, and some of you guys who are following her online, you know that she does this. But she also has another area where she does exactly the same stuff, so that she has a controlled area where she does it to see if anything happens there, in case there's chipmunks or squirrels or something doing it. But then she has this other area where she does it. And the reason why she does it is a controlled study is to find out whether or not the same thing happens in another location that happens over to here. And I mentioned that kind of idea about when you're looking at structures. Listen, I have a concept about structures, and I'm getting quite a bit of education regarding structures, especially what's called historical structures with First Nations. Check that out. Check that out. It's very important that you check that out. They are usually very, very large. They're very in isolated areas, and they stem out of a history of when First Nations used to migrate. And when they used to migrate during seasonal times, they would go to those locations, and those structures that are there are the supplies that they would use to start up a new settlement in that area during that season. So it's a good piece of information to get that. Going back to what Jennifer was talking about, it's important that you kind of do a lot of your own personal research stuff. There is so much stuff out there, and it's hard, especially when you guys are starting off, and I get it, man. I've been there with you. When you start thinking you're getting good information and solid videos and solid information, and later on you find out it's just kind of wonky. It's up to us to be fair and honest about it. It's certainly up to Bigfoot Okanagan to be fair and honest about it, because again, we're starting off with the people, the next generation. That's kind of who or at least my channel's for, is the next generation of searchers. We're missing something, obviously. I think that's going to change, though. And there's a lot of good people, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good people. Some of them I don't agree with, but I appreciate their positions and their efforts. And I'm sure that they don't appreciate, or that they appreciate my efforts, and they might not agree with me at all. But I think the idea about any kind of school of thought or study about any topic, it doesn't matter what topic it is, many schools come out, many arguments happen, many debate things occur. That's called wrestling of thought. And in that process, we get a little closer to the truth. Again, I'm not going to be posting anything that I don't find as far as personal stuff that I'm finding until I get some pretty good stuff. I don't think it's worth your guys' time. Educational stuff, yes. Upgraded stuff, yes. Setup stuff, and again, what I mean by setup stuff isn't about hoaxing. I appreciated Thomas talking about that. Never hoax. As an illusionist, you give me this camera, you give me a couple more cameras, you give me a couple of auto recorders, you give me a couple of good tech speakers, along with 3 good people, I can give you a video that totally would make you buy into it, that it's a Sasquatch. But there's not a chance I would do that, because once you hoax, your character becomes into question. So it's imperative. I also want to just share something else with you. I deal with people all year long. I don't expect people to be truthful. And the reason why I don't expect people to be truthful is because we have a hard time being truthful with ourselves. I do expect people to misrepresent themselves. It's kind of like, as I mentioned before, in counseling, it's a lot like dating. It's not what they're telling you in the first, second, third session, it's what they're not telling you that you need to know. I appreciated Thomas's thoughts on, I can't remember what he called it. It was a syndrome, I think he said. But basically what it is somebody who finds some really good stuff, and then after that he can't seem to find anything else, so they start kind of hoaxing. And look, there's enough stuff out there. You don't have to hoax. Talk to some good people. Go online, talk to some good people. Try to track out the ones who are the best of what they do, even if they're a little off rocker in regards to what you might perceive. I don't hound anybody because, whether it's the woo or UFO guys, I don't harp on any of those kind of guys. It's not my thing. I deal with the brain enough, and I deal with understanding how bizarre the brain works, especially when under high duress. Again, I mentioned before in another video about how your brain isn't just one brain. It's 3.5 pounds of jelly that has 3 types of brains in it: primal, emotional, and cognitive. And when you are under high duress and your brain does not know what's going on, all those 3 brains fire at the same time. And that can really affect your perceptions. And it just is the way the brain is wired and designed. So, I like to deal with solid facts. I understand how people can see things. I have seen things that weren't real. I've seen things that to me didn't make any sense that I believe are real, but I have to be a healthy skeptic about that whole thing. And because I sincerely believe something, I can still be sincerely wrong. And that's kind of the key part. I have to be fair about that whole process. So I'm not sure if this one helps you guys out or not. I got a bit more I'd like to say, but I think I'll hold off on that for right now. I hope to be in Alberta visiting Alberta Sasquatch campout in June 8th, 9th, and 10th. Then I want to get back and videotape a few more people on the coast who've been in the old guard, who's been out there for a while. Hang out with Thomas a bit more. He's going to show me some interesting sights. And then head down to the States. I'm going to change my routine a little bit. I'll go from Washington, Oregon, down to Utah. If any of you guys are on the east side of those states and want to get together with me, just send me a little message on, or email me. You can either message me on Facebook or on our email address I'll post at the end of this video. You guys keep going. Keep your excitement. Remember, it is addicting. So make sure you're fair with that. Don't lose your excitement about it, and don't worry about the addiction part of it. You'll figure that out. But also stay true, stay honest, stay factual, and we'll see you later.